When you think of classification of Skylanders, of course the first thing that you think of is the elements, but what doesn't come to mind immediately is the sub-classifications of two specific groups of gimmick Skylanders that we got in Swap Force and Imaginators. These swappers had the movement types, or swap abilities as some may call them, and Imaginators had the battle classes. In this video, we're going to be comparing these two different types of classifications to see which one better impacted the game. Did it feel like it was really pushed towards us? Do we feel like it limited creativity of the Skylanders? All sorts of aspects of these two classifications of Skylanders. And without further ado, I say we jump right into it. We're going to start with the Swap Force movement types. The Swap Force movement types really never felt like they were being pushed on us. When I look at the Swap Force movement types, I more feel like they were something that added to the swappers. What they really did was they gave the bottom half a purpose, because when you look at the swappers, the top half is where two of the attacks come from. The bottom half, you only get one of the attacks. So the bottom half, of course, from the start, it was lacking some of the complexity that the top had. And so giving it this movement type to let it access a certain new zone actually worked really well to benefit the game. In addition, in order to 100% the game, you could technically do it with just the bottoms of the swappers, and you didn't really need to buy the tops. Just kind of something random, but something also worth mentioning. As long as you have one top and two different controllers, you could definitely get all the elemental gates and all the swap zones with just the bottom half. That's not really what we're here to talk about. The bottom half definitely did add complexity and sort of added depth to what the bottom of the swapper half offered. And overall, I think the types they had were pretty interesting. There were 8 specific types. I mean, dig, spin, bounce, and there's teleport, and there's a few other ones. Rocket is also one. They're really cool overall. I like these. I don't think they took away from the design of the swappers. There's something else I think is really important to look at. Does the swap abilities or movement types limit creativity? Because with something that we'll get on into later in the video, which is the battle classes, I sometimes feel like those actually limited the creativity of the Skylanders design. With the Swap Force movement types, I don't really think it did that, because look at the bounce type. You have Firecracken and you have Rattleshake. Rattleshake bounces on his snake tail, and then Firecracken bounces on his dragon tail. Or you can look at Night Shift and Hulu, the two teleporting Skylanders. I mean, their bottoms are really nothing alike. It's not like they're really set into this formula of this is exactly what they need to look at. There's really a lot of creativity that you can still explore with these movement types. And then again, when you look at the Rocket one, I mean, Blast Zone, he has blasters on the bottom of his feet, and then Boomjet is riding a rocket around. They're very different and very unique, which is something I really like about the movement types. Something else that I would also say helps the swap abilities to not really feel like they're impacting the game and diversity of Skylanders is the fact that it was only for half the roster. When you look at half the roster, which is going to be the swappers, they all have the movement types, which they can use to access certain zones. When you look at the other half, which is the cores, there's 16 new cores, 16 new swappers. The cores don't have these, which means the cores can be as weird and wacky as they want. This allows you to get Skylanders like Popthorn or Slobbertooth that really would not fit into any of these swap abilities that we got with the swappers. This, of course, will help the roster feel diverse, because half the Skylanders, sure, they can have to fit into this formula for the swap abilities and movement types in order to be able to access these certain zones, but the other half of the Skylanders are free to have designs that really explore many different possibilities. They can be quadrupedal and have many different weird, wonky aspects that you wouldn't see on any of the swappers. Also, this is kind of a controversial topic, but these swappers were really limited to being male because of how the gimmick worked, and it would just kind of be very strange to see a female top half and a male bottom half on one Skylander. When you look at cores, of course, they could be female, and there was no issue with that at all. Something else that I have been alluding to thus far, but haven't really gone into depth with, is these side zones that the swap abilities have. Each one of them has unique side zones that will appear throughout the game. They're very much unique. Like the spin one is nothing like the bounce one, is nothing like the dig one. Sure, some of these aren't anything too crazy, but I would say they're pretty much on par with elemental gates for me as far as the content you can get out of them, how fun they are, and how worth doing they are. Overall, I think they're good. I think it's a good bit of extra content that really feels like it makes it feel like these swap abilities were worth having in the end, which I can very much appreciate. Overall, I think these swap abilities were pretty well done. I think they were a great way to add complexity to the bottom half of a swapper, as well as give a perfect way to add a new sort of side area to the games without it feeling like it was being pushed on you in any sort of way, and just very much a natural introduction to this new sort of side zone that we got in the game with, of course, these swap zones. But now let's look at the battle classes and see how they compare. The battle classes instantly, I feel like, were kind of put in a position where they couldn't live up to these swap abilities, or at least were kind of forced to be in this sort of situation that did not help them, that were going to sort of damage their reputation. And what I mean by this is that they were on every single Skylander and Imaginators. There's not a new Skylander or Creation Crystal that does not have a battle class at all. So of course, looking at Imaginators, you're not going to get a Dinosaur Skylander, you're not going to get a Dog Skylander, you're not going to get a Dragon Skylander, because everyone has to be a battle class. Of course, you could make the argument of, well, they just didn't put these battle classes in the game, but either way, even if they did, there's going to be so many complex, weird, wonky designs out there. You look at Rocky Roll, it's going to be impossible to ever get a Skylander that looks like Rocky Roll out of a game that every Skylander is forced into a battle class with. And the battle classes, for the most part, are all weapons. There really aren't any battle classes that focus on like other parts of the body other than the weapon that the Skylander holds in their hand. The only real two battle classes that are different as far as proportions go is the ninjas, which don't have a body, and then we look at the swashbucklers, which don't have legs and they have a tail instead, and they sort of float and hover around on that. Overall, I don't think this is too damaging, but of course this very much does limit creativity of the roster, and then since it was the entirety of the roster, there's no way to get around this issue whatsoever. I think at least making some battle classes that didn't just primarily and pretty much exclusively focus on the weapon that the Skylander is holding in their hand. I think introducing some battle classes like Dragon Skylanders, or maybe even something like Rocky Roll, or looking at Food Fight Soldier where they roll around on a larger rock or something like that, just any idea like that would have been much better than what we ended up getting, where every Skylander, it's either a blaster that they hold in their hand, it's a sword, it's a club, it's two swords, it's a double-sided sword, it's ninja stars that they're throwing. It's always something in their hands. There isn't really any diversity as far as where these weapons are or how they can be used to make designs of Skylanders more unique and intricate, which I think does hurt this. I think this gimmick absolutely does limit design creativity, as every Skylander has to be made with this sort of weapon in mind. And of course, even when you're creating your own Skylanders, you're still limited by this. I feel like my biggest issue with this system is that it was created for the Imaginators. You have to have some sort of system like this for Imaginators, because if you can only have one weapon, if it's only one sword, that system's going to be really bad. It's going to get really boring and going to get tired of it very quickly. But if you have infinite freedom, of course, you can't have that. That's impossible to do. If you could have a Skylander on 4 legs, 6 legs, you look at some of these designs. I go back to Scorp or Rocky Roll or a lot of their Slobbertooth. There's so many designs that just wouldn't make sense, and that would be really weird and wonky, and it would be pretty much impossible for Toys for Bob to make it so you could actually create designs like this. So when you look back at the system, it is designed to make these Skylanders be able to fit in these classes, and you to be able to actually make Skylanders that work in the end, which of course they had to do something like this. They had to limit how far the creativity could go with creation crystals to a certain extent, otherwise it'd get way too crazy and way too difficult for the developers. But what this did in the end is, since they applied this same system to the senseis, which they could have done whatever they wanted with, there's only 30 senseis that they have to design out. 20 if you say that, well, the villains didn't even have to get new designs. So when you look at this, there's 20 new senseis they have to design, and now you're making them all with battle classes in mind. If they got rid of this system and left this only for the Imaginators, it would have made the designs far more complex. But I still don't think this hurts the game too much, but in the end, it would have been better without these. I think the battle classes should have been reserved for the creation crystals, and the normal Skylanders should have had more design freedom than what they ended up getting. An issue that really also compiles on top of the battle classes already limiting creativity of the designs of the senseis is the fact that there are no special zones or areas to explore unlocked by the battle classes. These sensei realms are simply unlocked by having a sensei of the right element, not the battle class. So when you look at this, and then as far as in the levels, the only sort of gimmick you get out of these battle classes is the sensei shrines, where you just watch an animation play out to get a special power. This really has no influence on the battle class, has no influence on this system. The cutscene is unique for each of the senseis anyways. The Sky Chi attack that they get is also unique to each of the senseis, meaning the battle classes doesn't affect any of this at all. It really feels like the battle classes were just an excuse for the designs of the senseis to be lazier and lazier than pretty much any of the old Skylanders, and they do not have much creativity as a result of this, which is really my biggest problem with battle classes. Do I think it makes the Skylanders objectively worse? Not really. Do I think it limits the range of Skylanders that we got and how diverse the designs could be? Absolutely. I think without the battle classes on the senseis, this game would have been much better. Do I think the battle classes needed to be there for the creation crystals? Yes, there need to be some limit in some sort of format for you to create these imaginators on. The battle classes on the surface weren't really a bad idea for a new gimmick, or at least part of the new gimmick, but I don't think they were executed in a way that really helped the game out in any way, or made it feel like these Skylanders had these unique, intricate, and enticing designs. I think they really did not live up to their only sort of predecessor, which was the movement types from Swap Force. I think these Swap Force movement types did almost everything better. They weren't pushed on you. It didn't feel like they were taking over the whole game only to get nothing out of them. Swap Force, they were very lightly introduced in a way that made them easy to use, but also you were going to be using them naturally, and they had zones specific to them. In Imaginators, they're all completely pushed on you, even though they unlock pretty much nothing new in the game. That's really my problem with battle classes. A lot of you probably will agree with me, a lot of you probably won't agree with me, but that's fine. Leave your opinion down in the comments below. I'd be very interested to see what you guys seem to think, because this might be a little bit of a different video compared to normal, because I am saying that Swap Force had a much better sub-classification of Skylanders than Skylanders Imaginators did, which of course is not the normal for the channel. I normally like what Imaginators does more than most people, so I thank you guys for watching. I do hope you guys did enjoy this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye, everybody.